We can't ever start when Scott's not ready. Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Live here on Keystroke Medium. I am Josh Hayes here with Josh Gayou. My co-host is not Josh Moon, and we are going to have a great show today. It's Josh Sqaured. I always like the Josh Square episodes because we've had so many Scott Squared episodes that I kind of feel like we get left out. And I don't really like that.
We've had some big Josh Squared episodes, though. I mean,
honestly, every Josh Squared episode that we have is a huge episode.
Pretty epic. I
mean, it's the biggest. It's the biggest Josh episode ever. I guarantee you it is.
The other ones,
it's gonna be huge. Yeah.
The other ones, not so much.
Welcome, Josh, to the show. Thanks for coming and hanging out with us, brother.
Hi there. You guys are insane, man.
Yes,
a little bit, yeah.
We were amped up just a little bit. And you made it just in time.
Yeah, right.
Running, as it were, catching. Everybody that's in the live chat, thank you guys for coming and hanging out with us. Corvo, and we've got actually two new people that I've never seen in a live chat. So welcome, Sean in Alaska is watching tonight, and Daniel Pope. And I don't know if you guys have been on before or not. If
I know who Daniel is.
Yeah, so he's on here, and so is Sean in Alaska. We have Corvo, who's our mysterious #1 guest fan.
Number one.
Nobody knows who he is. He's a big mystery. And Rick and Ken, and there's another one, Annie Dadrin. I don't know that I've ever seen him or her on the show before, so that's cool. Welcome all the new people to the live chat. This is where all the fun happens, is the live chat. So welcome, and we'll kick shenanigans. We'll kick this off. Oh, James McDonald. Oh, cool, awesome. Josh brought all his fans to this episode of Keystroke, so welcome. On that note,
all the ones that heard about it just today, because I heard about it just today.
Yeah, like 35 minutes ago. Hey, can you rush home from work and maybe get in a wreck on the way? Trying to get to the show. Thank you.
Let's all take a moment.
Traffic laws on the way home.
Let's all take a moment to thank Steve for setting up this phenomenal interview. Thank you, Steve. You're a good publisher and agent and setting people up for interviews. Very good job. Everybody give Steve a really big round of applause for Steve.
You know what's great about that is the book that we're working on right now, my 4th novel. I've got a character in that story who he's not right in the head, and he's just decided that anybody in his life who is a good person that he approves of is named Gus. And anybody who is evil or he dislikes for some reason is named Steve.
Steve, yeah.
So it works perfectly in this case.
Oh yeah, I definitely see the correlation.
I always, whenever I hear the name Steve, I always think of the Multiplicity movie with what's his name, Michael Kramer, or whatever, where he copies himself, but each copy is a little bit less good than the first one because the artifact. And so by like the 6th copy of himself, he just walks around saying, "I like pizza, Steve.
I like pizza, Steve."
I think that might be where I got the name Steve from, because that's something that I've been doing, since I was in college. I'm terrible with names, right? So I can't remember anybody's name ever unless I deal with them constantly. And at one point, I just started calling people Steve if I couldn't remember their name. And they knew what was going on. It was basically, they're like, well, my name is not Steve. I know that, but if I put any effort into remembering or trying to remember what your name is, it's going to be even worse.
Yeah, just humor me.
So I'm going to pick something that's, I know it's totally off base. And I think I picked up Steve from seeing that Multiplicity movie because it was hilarious to me that everybody became Steve for that guy.
I love that one.
Yeah.
That leg's just going to have to come off, Steve.
right. And he's got the saw.
He's got like a handsaw.
Yeah. What I think is great is that eventually you're going to be right. Like eventually you're going to say, "Hey, Steve," and he's like, "Oh, hi," because statistically you're going to have to say hi to a Steve at some point. So one time you're going to be right.
I think when I met Steve, the Steve we're talking about, I probably fucked his name up too, and just.
Because honestly, spell your name the way you want people to say it. That's all. His
last name.
Yeah.
That's why Josh's name is Hayes.
Yes. I took the hyphen out for the ease of publication.
I can't talk too much about other people's names because people have been screwing my last name up for years.
Did I get it right? Gayou.
Oh yeah, no, you did. You totally did. That's kind of been like the one good thing about kind of the whole book thing, getting aside from all the other stuff, is that people are now starting to get my name right. So that's pretty good.
What's going to be great is I'm going to go on a show like in 2 years, and they're going to go back and like do research on me. And like, he said he pronounced his name Hayes, and that's me on the show. This is Josh Hayes, and I'm like, ugh, that's not my name. But tell us a little bit about yourself, Steve. You've got the Commune series out now. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started in writing.
I got started in writing just on a total whim. I'm probably there's no good explanation for why things are going as well as they are right now. I've probably broken every rule they've given to you in the how to become a writer seminars, or all that stuff. It's like everything that they tell you should probably be doing. I didn't do it because it didn't sound like interesting to me. And at the same time, it seemed that if you really want to break out or get noticed, you probably shouldn't be doing the same shit that everybody else is doing. So if I was kind of going counter to what everybody says you should be doing, I probably felt like I was on the right track. But also, as I learned more about the business side of things, which I'm not good at all, I kind of realized that it's like, yeah, well, maybe you just got really lucky, and maybe you should have been doing all that stuff they tell you should be doing, and maybe you succeeded despite your own best efforts. So yeah, but before I was doing this, I was an engineer for maybe I guess like around 15, 16 years before I wrote my first book. I'm still an engineer now. I still do it as a day job. Just because being a senior engineer in the avionics space, it's not exactly flipping burgers. It's a pretty good career. So, and there's a lot of stuff that I'm still doing there, and there's some big things I'm doing in that market. So I'm not ready to walk away from that yet.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
Also, to live in California, every little bit helps. So that's also good.
Right.
Yeah. Like if I was going to support my family 100% off of writing, I'd probably have to move to another state where the cost of living is a little bit lower. We could do it pretty comfortably in another state, but here it would get pretty tight pretty quick.
Yeah, so like $25 if you want to come to Kansas. You can go a long way.
Well, no, that's the crazy thing. It's just on the book royalties, like here, I mean, the royalties that I've earned off of my books have been really nice. Don't get me wrong. I've done, it's like I said, I've done better than probably I have a right to. I've done better than a lot of people that are trying to do this right now. And even so, I mean, the cost of living in California is so nuts that it's still like top ramen money out here. So,
oh yeah.
So having my what I call my grown-up career, and then also writing, puts us in a pretty comfortable lifestyle out in California. But if I went to another state like a Kansas or a Georgia or a Texas or like that, and then just did everything off of writing money, we'd be about as comfortable there as we are here right now. So it's just, it's kind of balancing what you're willing to put up with.
Sure. Absolutely.
So yeah, outside of that, I've kind of talked about this at length with some of my readers and other stuff, but as far as how wrong I am for what I'm doing right now, I was nearly like a high school dropout, barely graduated. I don't even know what an SAT test looks like. Like everybody said, oh, you should really take your SATs and be serious and get into a good university. I never did that. I kind of, everything that I've done that ended up going really well for me, I kind of fell into as an accident. When I went to college, I went to school. I didn't really know exactly what I was looking for. So, I'm going to do computer stuff. I'm going to learn to write software. And the degree I got was just information systems, right? So that's like crunching data and all that. And then I fell into being an engineer. I was writing software for helicopters. The cockpits and everything in a helicopter. I wrote all the software for that.
Oh, very cool.
And then I kind of fell into this other avionics company just sort of by association, where I was like one of the first guys they hired to work on this big connectivity system. So it's putting big satellite antennas on aircraft and connecting it to the ground via satellite so you get your internet, your movies, live TV, or whatever. The whole reason you can check your email right now on a flight going from A to B is because of guys like me. And all of that was just a big accident. It was nothing I ever planned. I just kind of fell into it sideways. And then once I got there, found out, hey, I'm pretty good at this. I can do this. Writing was very much the same. It was like this perfect intersection of events. And I was kind of paying attention when it happened. I had gotten into audiobooks really big. And it seems to be like the common story between everybody who's like an R.C. Bray fan. Everybody says, "What was your first R.C. Bray book?" And everybody goes, "Martian." You know, they love that book. So that was my first really big audiobook, and then I started binging on that.
It's crazy the amount of people that like in our space, you look at audio and you're like, yeah, audio is the thing to get into. But you talk to just regular people. Like I bumped into a couple of my old coworkers today and they're like, audiobooks? Really? And I'm like, guys, yes, audiobooks.
Yeah.
And they're like, I would never listen to a book. I'm like, why? And they just look at me like, well, I don't know. And I'm like, you should try it.
It's really, it's a massive blind spot. I think a cultural blind spot. I don't know where the stigma has come from that only the dumbasses listen to audiobooks.
Right.
It's just a more effective use of your time.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Definitely. That's how I listen to all my books.
Yeah.
If I'm going to be stuck in traffic an hour and a half one way, and I mean, I don't care if you have to go down to the store in the corner in California, it's a fucking ordeal to get out there.
Oh yeah.
But you know, if I'm going to be stuck in that car all that time, I want to be accomplishing something. And I don't want to be listening to the radio and listening to the same stupid commercials, you know, over and over and over again. I want to be doing something to enrich myself or learn something new. And I mean, audiobooks, you know, until self-drive on cars gets better that I can watch a movie, the audiobooks are going to be the way to go.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And, you know, they bring literature to so many people that had a hard time experiencing it before. You know, there's people who just can't read for whatever reason. They have cognitive challenges, or they're just blind. There's still people today who just didn't learn how to read. That they exist. And it used to be like when I was a kid, you either had audiobooks that were half-heartedly performed or not very well produced at all, or you have these really god-awful text-to-speech programs where it sounds like you're being read to by...
Jack ran up the hill.
Yeah.
Jack ran down the hill.
And it really feels like audiobooks today are going through a performance renaissance.
Oh, yeah.
Because the talent in the business now is it's like I've never seen before. And R.C. Bray is a really obvious standout, but there's also so many other just incredible performers. They're really performers.
It's crazy. Like Luke Daniels and R.C. Bray, the two that pop out to me, performing wise. You've also got what's the guy that read Make Me No Grave? What's his name? Oliver Wyman, who did fantastic for Make Me No Grave, which is also an Athon book. That book hit 52 on the Amazon store today.
Overall.
So congrats to Haley for that.
Athon's making some waves, man.
They're doing huge things, but on the performance of books, it's crazy because not only do you have readers that will read the book because of the author, you'll have readers that'll listen to the book because of the narrator. And there's people that get into series for R.C. Bray, and all they do is listen to R.C. Bray books. It's ridiculous. Like it's a craze.
I've had people that have told me too. They're like, your writing's okay, but R.C. makes the book.
Thank you for that compliment.
No, you know what? I'm totally fine with it. I get it because not everybody is going to be first of all, text is tricky because people don't necessarily read with the inflection that you intended when you wrote.
Right.
If you're really good, they probably meet you about like there's probably like 80 to 85% overlap between what you heard in your head and what they're playing back on their own when they read the text. Yep. So that's one experience, but that experience is not for everybody, which is totally cool. But then the book becomes something more. It's transformative when you get a really good narrator because they take what you put down and they turn it into something more than it was just on the page. And especially with RC, it's like I'm just going to call him Bob now because calling him RC sounds pretentious as hell. But the thing with Bob
feels like you need to put a monocle on him. Like, RC Bray reads my book.
Or I just sound like a kiss ass, right? Like, that's my man RC. But when Bob does a book, he'll give certain line deliveries and put inflection in different places than I ever thought. And I realized it's like, whoa, okay, his instincts are better than mine. Me being the writer kind of stands in like a director position for a movie, right? But I get that dynamic now.
You're like the creator and he's a performer.
When directors talk about letting an actor go and just kind of do their thing and they come up with something better than they would have envisioned.
Yep.
Bob does that. And good narrators do that. So it's good to just get the hell out of the way and let him do it. And so if people tell me that their preferred experience is through the performance of a narrator or that they think that his work improved what I did, that's fine. That's probably true. And I'm a big fan.
He did the narration for Commune, which is your series, and your fourth book just came out. Let's talk about that series for a while and just kind of break it down because I mean it's doing really, really well in Audible. It did really well in ebook before, so
it's doing better in ebook now.
Yeah, it's the first novel that you published. What was the idea behind it, and then kind of talk about the evolution of the story.
Okay.
I like when people answer that way because it means that their wheels are spinning and we're going to get a really good answer.
Well, for one, there's a bunch of different stuff at play here. For one, like the Commune series is kind of old news to me now because I've already written another book after that. Now I'm working on a completely new series.
Yeah.
So it's like I've got to put my brain where I was back when I first started writing it.
Yeah.
I've lived with that series for so long now that at this point it now feels like it's just always been there. It's always been a thing that I've been working on. That's not true, obviously. Mm-hmm. But what I can say is that. Okay, who's got a kid?
That's my kid. I'm going to mute my microphone so you can talk.
How cute. Okay.
That's awesome.
That's great, man.
Mine are usually spring things and scream at each other. So
I had to throw all the kids out of my house when I got home. My office here is upstairs and there's the game room right there. And my son's got all his buddies over. So I came through the door and saw them all piled up there. And I was like, all right, everybody get out. I got stuff to do. So anyway, sorry. I've always enjoyed the like a post-apocalyptic setting. I enjoy both the freedom that gives you as a writer, but I also enjoy the limitations it sets on you too, because you really have to concentrate on a realistic framework for the story to sit on top of. And if you get it wrong, people are going to let you know really quick. And I've always enjoyed more like realism in stories versus, there's a lot of post-apocalyptic writing out there that really takes on a fantastic bent. And I think these days my go-to example for that is the Helldiver series by Nick Smith. I call him Salisbury Steak Smith. But that's
right on the edge of post-apocalypse and sci-fi. It's right on the edge of those two genres.
That's for me. The reason that's like a perfect example for me is because he's not trying to be he's not trying to inject his story with a bunch of scientific verity, you know. From an engineering standpoint, you know, I think from that perspective a lot, a giant airship doesn't make a lot of sense. But if that's what you're getting hung up on for those particular books, you're being dumb. You shouldn't do that. His books are a lot more about the higher concept and everything that happens inside of that. It's almost like you're making this agreement with him when you start the book out. It's like, okay, they probably don't do airships, but assume they do. Now what?
Right.
And then you get into that story, and it's like, all right, if I'm worried about how reasonable it is to have a giant airship full of people, then I'm really missing the fun stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
So
well, it's funny because every genre you look at in science fiction, you're like, okay, zombies aren't real. The world is probably not going to be nuked ever.
Faster than light travels.
We're probably never going to go faster than light. Yeah, like all that stuff is never going to happen. So 90% of the science fiction genres out there are impossible to happen. But you'll get, like you say, you'll get people, airships aren't possible at all. And what are you talking about?
It's like, calm down.
Yeah.
So so guys like Nick are really crushing stories like that. So I tend to stay away from those elements, and I try to hold what I do in a more grounded space, reality, right? And I usually, because I tend to operate more in science fiction from my thought process, I give myself like one cheat in my stories. Like there's usually one thing that I need that's probably not possible or very realistic. But if I allow that thing, then everything else after that I need becomes possible.
Is that kind of like the SPP guys did the unicorn Western, where they were like, you can do everything, but then you have to have a unicorn in it? Yeah, we'll believe that's what they did. Basically, they said, what's the most ridiculous thing we could do in your book? And it will throw everything out the window. Like, all your questions don't matter now. And they're like, we'll just make it a unicorn. And then every other question you have in the book means absolutely nothing because he's writing a unicorn in the Western.
That's great. Yeah. So from my end, for the Commune series, the thing that was my cheat was basically how the apocalypse happens. And, I was trying to think of something that was realistic, and it's like, okay, so there's a solar flare. That's probably not enough to completely wipe everybody out. So there's some virus that happens as well. And, it's kind of funny to me how many people got hung up on those two things. Huh. And they're, oh man, the flare. And they start researching on coronal mass ejections. Or they start, the little details I've put about the virus in the book, and they're trying to figure out the morphology of the virus, or how it transfers, or how it works. People that they're teaching themselves about viral infections and things, and they think that it's gonna play into the story later somehow. And I'm like, no, man, that was just the thing I needed to.
Just a setting.
I just needed to wipe people out, and I needed to really. So for me, like, that's that one thing. I just kind of cheated and said, all right, well, there's a magic virus that comes and destroys just this much of the population is left alive, and now go. And so everything beyond that point in my stories, with the exception of a few action sequences that I kind of ham up there, it's mostly just realistic, and I needed that one little cheat to get me there. But for me,
so I have this question. It just because we're talking about the event that creates the setting, but so like I watched the first 2 seasons of The Walking Dead, and as far as I know, we don't ever find out what happened to cause the whole. I don't know. I haven't finished. Maybe they have, but for the first 2 seasons,
they've totally lost their way.
Yeah. So we never actually ever find out what happened, what caused it. So
we don't need to know.
Right. So it's funny to me that you're saying that people are getting hung up on the reasons why it happened for you, and instead of just leaving it, I'm not going to tell you what happened.
If I had it to do over again, I'd probably go back and write those books without specifying what happened. They'd just be starting from day one,
Yeah.
Well, really, the way the book starts now, the first book kind of starts out with like after everything has completely gone to shit and everybody's died off.
Yeah.
But if I had to do it over again, I probably wouldn't even specify the details of what it was. It would be one of those things where everybody knows what happened, so they feel like they don't need to talk about it anymore. Like,
right.
When was the last time when you were discussing the September 11th attacks with somebody? When was the last time you actually took a moment to describe what they were? Right. Everybody just says 9/11. They talk about it in code.
Right.
So because
everybody knows, you're absolutely
everybody knows
right.
what it is. There's no like if you I can't. There was some book series that I remember they were talking about some animal, and they were trying to pick out some ancient animal on this planet, and nobody knew what the damn thing looked like. And they said, well, how come nobody? Because nobody ever takes the time to describe what a horse looks like in a book.
Absolutely.
Outside of basic coloring, whether it's broad-chested, slender of leg, or sway-backed. They don't say, okay, a horse is the thing with 4 legs and it has an elongated face. Nobody spends the time on that. So I'd probably do it like that. But let me try to answer this question. I told you guys I ramble.
No, these are the best shows ever.
You're making our life easy.
All right.
This is so not work for me. I get to just sit and listen to talking. I'm like, oh, this is so nice. This is so nice.
So I believe the question was, why did you write a damn book?
Yeah, actually, let's do the show sponsor really quick before we get into that, and then we can knock that out of the way, and then we don't have to come. This is the part of the show where everybody gets my profile because I have to read off the screen, so you get my fantastic profile.
It's like this radio.
I know, right? This week's show sponsor is Age of Heroes, a superhero adventure by Ekeke. He was actually on the show. Was it last week he was on the show? Was he on the show last week or the week before? I can't remember. Either last week's show or the week before, we had CC on the show talking about this very book. So if you haven't watched that show, go and watch it because he's got some really good insights on the novel. Age of Heroes. Every hero has a beginning. So does every villain. When the world's greatest superhero is found murdered, new threats emerge. And 3 lives live forever changed. From the ashes rise a new generation of superheroes. But with immense superpowers and a history of tragedy, the line between right and wrong blurs. Will they become protectors of justice or agents of chaos? Choose your side in Age of Heroes, the first book in the Pantheon Saga superhero series. Start reading today. And it does have a little italicized warning. This novel contains moderate swearing and big damn superhero action. If you're not a fan of moderate swearing or big damn superhero action, this novel might not be for you. But I can guarantee you, if you get it, you will love it. Ekeke is a brilliant author. He put a lot of time and effort into this novel. We talked to him about it at length. Gosh, it must have been last week. Now I'm losing my mind. All my weeks are running together now that I don't have to go to work. But yeah, go check out his book, Age of Heroes. I will put the link in the live chat. It'll also be in the show notes as well. Let's see. I put it in the live chat right now. Bam. There you go. Go buy his book. Go read it. It's 99 cents actually right now, and I don't know how long it's going to be that price. So go and pick it up quickly for 99 cents. Go do it. That's an order. All right, now I'm going to come back to the screen over here. Isn't it like a news broadcast where like the anchor is like, and the severed head was found in an empty elevator shaft? Back to you, Vern.
I'm kind of digging your setup over there. It looks like
it is mission control. It's like the Starship Enterprise, the Joshua Prize.
Oh, this is the Joshua Prize. I've got my my command center set up. Yes, my wife hates it. My wife, when she comes in this room, she just rolls her eyes. And I'm like, are you kidding? Look at this. Look at the setup.
I'm sitting at my writing desk right now. I've got a very small desk. It's only about this wide. It's got just enough room for my computer and my coffee cup.
That's perfect.
I don't want anything else in front of me.
Yeah, sometimes it is slightly distracting sometimes, but
well, you've got a bunch of shit going on there. It's really You've even got some soundproofing on the walls behind you. My goodness.
I've got soundproofing over there. I've got soundproofing on the ceiling. Well, the thing was about this office, and people have mentioned the sound baffles. I've got like 60 sound baffle panels in this room because
I can still hear your kid.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, he's got pipes. Let me tell you, he's got pipes. So when we originally redecorated this room, it was a concrete slab. It was supposed to be a tornado shelter, because Kansas. But
Right.
so when I first came into this room, I was just like, whatever, I'll just be in this room. So unfinished walls and foundation. Well, then my wife got a new job where she needed a stay-at-home office, and I had moved into another bedroom. And then so she was like, well, I kind of want to decorate. So we put siding, drywall and hardwood floors and all the stuff. We made the room look pretty. And I was over there. Well, she overruled me and got the nice room. And I came back in here, but the room echoed so much because of the hardwood floors and everything else that I had to put sound baffling in. And now everybody's like, what are you, in a rock studio? And I'm like, yes, I'm a rock musician. I have a guitar and some drums. And no, I just have a show a couple days a week, and I need to not echo in the room.
Well, yeah, I mean, it would be ridiculous to have all that gear you obviously have on your desk and then just be echoing. That
you can't have that.
Want it to sound shitty.
Yeah.
And Corvo says, just tell your wife that Batman has multiple computers and he's cool, which is also true. Batman has multiple screens, and I like to call this the Bat keyboard and the Bat soundboard. This is the Bat chair.
Did we have a guest one time that had the blanket? You remember the blanket? I don't
remember the
blanket.
We
had somebody that was trying to get their sound right, and then they were talking under a blanket because they were they're at their in-laws' house, and it was so echoey.
I do vaguely remember a show that had a blanket. Yeah. I do vaguely remember a show where a guy was under a blanket.
People are in their cars, and stuff out in the garage or on the street.
That's got to be rough, man. You're just hiding under a blanket.
Yeah.
What kind of thing is that for a grown man?
It's great.
We've actually every time that we have Nick Cole on the show, he is always in his car. And the last time we had him on the show, he was actually driving his car, and his wife, Nicole, which is not the same Nicole, she was holding the phone while we were doing the interview while he's driving through town, and then he pulls into his garage and finishes the show in his garage.
I almost thought that was going to be me coming home tonight.
So let's
officer that pulled you over.
Yeah, that's right. So let's talk about the inspiration for it, or actually we can maybe talk about your newest book if you want to do that.
Inspiration, premise, favorite character, favorite second characters. The question I normally ask is, do you have a favorite secondary character?
There is. Well, so like the comic series, everybody's always asking me what character is you, and they're like, oh, are you? The protagonist's name is Jake, and they say, oh, are you Jake? They think I must be because the character in the story shaves his head and he's got a beard.
Obviously,
I'm bald.
I see clues.
I'm bald and I've got a beard, but the two things never really occurred to me until somebody else pointed it out. I'm not. There's really very little of Jake in me outside of the fact that I'm the one pulling all the strings. But the character I think that I most identify with in the books is this guy that I wrote named Clay, who kind of defaults into the series antagonist, but he's really not. In fact, that's one of when you were asking me why did I want to write these books or what was I doing when I decided to, really, I had a bunch of different ideas that I wanted to explore when I wrote these books. The main point for me was really that I wanted a world that I could build and just take my time in. I didn't want to feel like I was rushed to get anywhere. I wanted to kind of set up some starting conditions for myself and then just go exploring and see where it took me. And then in the process of writing the first book, the complete arc for what I thought was going to be a 3-book series at the time became really clear. So the first book went through a really big edit after I had the first draft done, because I figured out what I wanted it to be after I'd finished it. The first draft of the book was kind of aimless. Jake was a totally different character, and I don't know, maybe it surprises some of my readers, But Jake in the first draft of the first book was a lot more like this character Gibbs that shows up in the second book. Gibbs is, I think, kind of the series favorite for all the readers. He's this really salty Marine character who I had to research my ass off on to get right because I wanted him to be really authentic. And I'm just a civilian. I've not served in any branch of service. So I had to do my homework on him so that he felt right. What I wanted was if there's anybody who's been in the military, I wanted Gibbs to be somebody that they recognized. I wanted them to read the book and go, oh, I've served with that guy. And a lot of my readers tell me I got it right, which is great. But the personality that Gibbs now has, it was basically the same personality that the main character had, this Jake guy. And then when I got to the end of the book, I realized it was all wrong, and I had to redo it. So after I kind of got through the process of writing that and then went and retooled it, I'd figured out that the story really needed to be about two factions of people that had none of them are bad people, but they just had completely different philosophies about what they thought was the proper way to survive. And those philosophies would just be incompatible. Then you take them and you put them into, the same geographic space where they're having to vie for the same resources, and then just, see what happens between them. And then through the process of writing that, I used the series as a platform to kind of explore just different ideas and look for ways to do them differently than what I'm so used to seeing. Like you brought up The Walking Dead earlier. And one of the things that bores me about that show is that there's obvious bad guys in the show.
Yep.
Like Negan is just this obvious over the top bad guy. That bores me.
Yep.
Bad guys bore me. Villains bore me.
And when the conflict was what's the Rick Grimes, is that the character, and then like his best friend, when they were at odds, that was much more interesting because
see, that's the funny thing too, because that part of the show that happened on the farm, that was I think the second season. Right. Everybody complains about that season, saying, "Oh, that season sucked because they were just stuck on a farm the whole time." I thought that was the show's strongest season.
Yeah. The first season and the second season all building up to where they're going to have to make a choice, And I thought that was much more interesting. And then the first time they had to deal with humans instead of zombies was pretty interesting, but now it's just.
Well, so the first version of Negan that we had on the show was this guy called the Governor, and I don't remember his character's name. But I thought the Governor was a much more interesting antagonist for the series just because he wasn't a bad guy.
Right.
He was kind of an asshole, and he eventually ended up becoming the monster that we all thought he was going to be. But it was not a straight line to that end point. I mean, there were reasons for why he got there.
Yeah.
Negan is just a cartoon. He's a ridiculous caricature. So, like for me, bad guys, like obvious bad guys, obvious villains, they're just boring. They don't interest me. So, in the books, when I write my books, I kind of make it a point to that all the major characters, none of them are bad guys, none of them are villains. They're just people, and a lot of the times they've got goals or points of view that just don't line up with whoever it is we've decided this time is going to be the protagonist or the protagonist of the series. And when you kind of mash them together, conflict happens. But I don't want them to be just like the guy who's twirling his mustache and tying women to the train tracks. That's just it just puts me right to sleep. It just bores the shit out of me every time.
Because that is the villain, and for the story to end, the hero is going to have to defeat the villain. It's much more interesting to me, like you're saying, where you have multiple characters that all want different things that maybe conflict with other characters in the story. And it's kind of like a Song of Ice and Fire in that aspect, where in that series there is a bad guy, but
your good guys are bad half the time too.
But exactly. Everybody is against everybody else, and you could be a huge Cersei fan and hate you know, Tyrion or Daenerys or whoever, or you could be a Tyrion fan and hate everybody else. And so it's like it creates this dynamic where you can root for other people. And do you see that in your series where you have people that are maybe kind of in different camps where they're like, I want this person to do better and this?
My intent in writing the story is that when you got to the end of the series, you didn't know who the hell you wanted to root for. You had no clue who you wanted to win. That was the point. I wanted everybody to be identifiable. I utilized a thought experiment when I was writing these stories just to put myself in the right headspace. I wrote the first book and set up the obvious heroes. There's not really a lot of, I mean, there are encounters in the first book and antagonists and so forth, but there's not a standout antagonist in the book. It's just they run into people, and the book is a lot more about them just trying to survive and get their feet under them. So obviously, when you start on that book, everybody starts the series. And if people haven't listened, I should probably say spoilers, but if
no, we like to spoiler alert after you spoil. That's the thing.
When you start the series, it's like the characters that you start with. Well, okay, obviously these are the heroes, so everybody else that they encounter is obviously the bad guys, or they're on the heroes team, which I don't want that. So after I wrote the first book, from that point forward, I wrote from the perspective that the group of people that everybody thought was going to be the bad guys were the good guys in my head. So this other faction that Clay is running, for me as the writer, that's my good guy. That's the series protagonist for me. Yeah. Now you don't think so because you've started with a different group of people,
right?
And that doesn't mean that I take that other group of people and now start writing them as obvious bad guys. They just keep developing the way they always were going to. They keep on that trajectory. They're still the people that we like, or in some cases kind of fell in love with, starting from book one. It's just now I've got another set of people over here, and they're every bit as much the heroes to me in this book as this other group. And then they run into each other at some point, and then that's got to be resolved. And because this is a work of dramatic literature, it's got to be resolved through conflict.
Right.
And so when I get to the end of the whole thing, that's my intent. There's definitely some winners. There's definitely some losers. And as readers, I don't really want you to know how you feel about that. I want you to come out of that asking yourself a lot of questions. Like, what God, where did this go so wrong?
I absolutely love that. Yeah.
Do I agree with the decisions that my hero made? Do I feel like the people coming out of the story were the protagonists still righteous coming out of it? Were the antagonists still the antagonists coming out of it? And I there's no clear answer. I don't know the answer, and I don't try to give it to the reader. I'm asking the reader, here, what do you think? Here's this thing that I've made. Here's what's happened. Now, what do you think it means? And I'm not allowed to tell you as a writer.
Those stories.
Oh, sorry. I just want to. People will ask me after I've written a book or put it out and say, oh, "What did you mean by this?" Or "What was your intention here?" Or "What was it what were you trying to convey?" Or if I have characters in my book that espouse a certain philosophy, sometimes I'll get a reader that comes back and wants to debate the topic with me.
Yeah.
And
characters' politics, not mine.
Yeah, and a lot of times I'll just talk it out with them. I'll play devil's advocate, but what I keep, it's almost like I have to train my readers because they're asking me, well, what did you think? What do you mean? And I have to explain to them, I can't tell you. I'm not allowed to tell you. It's not my place to tell you. Me telling you what I meant is like George Lucas coming back and making Han Solo shoot last.
Right.
I'm not allowed to say.
It's like the end of Inception, right? Like these are the type of stories that I love, because these are the type of stories that will continue conversation, because you have to talk to somebody and you say, this is the way I interpret that story. And another person can read the exact same story and interpret it a different way. And then you have a conversation there where this is how I interpret it. This is how I interpret it. And it's kind of like Inception when he spins the top. and now everyone in the theater is looking at the same top on the same table, and they see it wobble, and the movie ends, and we all know that. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, well, I was just going to say, if I give you the answer, then I've robbed you of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've done you a disservice.
Well, but that also, you talk about like readers coming back and like rereading series, like the question of what is the author trying to say? People are going to go back and reread and just reread because they feel like the answer is going to be hidden in those words somewhere that they didn't pick up on the first time.
Some readers got kind of pissed at me for that because, well, so there's the type of writing that I love and that I love to do. There's two stories that are happening. There's what's obvious. There's what's on the page, and if I'm doing my job right, then you can enjoy that story passively, and you can take things away from it. And it doesn't matter if you solve all the mysteries or not.
Right.
The story is still fun. But I've also got a story that's happening off the page that you don't really get to see. It's hinted at. And if you're an active reader, then you can engage in the process of filling in those blanks. And that's really what I want to see happening with my readers. Like when they get on the group pages and the various things, they say, "Oh, can we talk about the books here?" Or, are you afraid of spoilers? And I'm like, "No, this is exactly what this is for. You come and discuss theories here. This is all for you." So, I think I might have been, I may have forgotten what I was about to say, but yeah, So the main point is really just that there's always something happening just underneath the surface. You only get hints. I never just come out and say what it is in the book. In any book I write, I never just come out and say, "Oh, by the way, the answer is this." I hate when books do that. There's certain books, Rowling did this a lot in her Harry Potter series, but I understand why. They were for a younger audience. So sometimes you kind of have to give that apple at the end of the excursion.
You have to do the Scooby-Doo at the end.
Yeah. So so she does that, and it's like, yeah, cool. I mean, they're her books. Let her do what she wants. But you get to the end of the book.
They've only made like $1 billion.
Yeah, she might know what she's doing, but you always get to the end, and there's always the one character that goes, "There's still one thing I don't understand," and then it's like, okay, let's have a bunch of exposition and fill in the blanks for the people who can keep up. And I don't like that. I don't like doing that. I don't like putting a definitive meaning on things, because the act of writing a novel or storytelling in general, it's a collaborative process between the storyteller and the person who's absorbing the story. They must decide what it means to them. So I love having that open-endedness. What that also means is people are going, well, what is the big mystery throughout the Commune series is, who is this Jake guy, and what the hell's wrong with him? And what I can say to my readers who've read it, or people who are thinking about reading it, is that all the answers that you need to figure it out are there. It's just, I'm never going to tell you. And then you never get a definitive answer in the book. You just have to have your eyes open. And when you see it, it kind of hits you right in the face. But most of the people that I've talked to who've read these books, they've said they've had to read them like 3 or 4 times before they figured out what was going on. Because I usually, I'll set up a mystery, but then I won't really pay it off until like 2 books later. So you gotta be keeping notes, Yeah.
I think one of the best endings that I've read on a series, like you're talking about, where you just kind of leave it open and kind of open to interpretation, is the end of the Dark Tower series. I don't know if you're familiar, but the book 7, basically, I hated book 7. I hated the ending of book 7 until I went back and read the Gunslinger again.
Did you read the original version of the Gunslinger, or the one that he touched up after he wrote it to make it coincide with how he ended the series?
So I have not ever read the original Gunslinger. I read the touched up version, and so that might skew.
It's not that different. It's not that different. All he did was he rewrote like a few pages in the beginning of the book so that he was carrying the horn with him.
Yeah.
Or no, he mentioned the horn. That's what it was.
Yeah.
He mentions the horn. Yeah.
Right.
Sorry.
Well, so at the open-endedness, and you can just say, well, that's the end, and he does everything else, but you can interpret it as, oh, he's starting over again.
Yeah.
But he never really says what he's doing. And but I like that kind of, like you say, the open-ended nature of the book, because you can discuss that and go back and reread it and kind of glean everything. Because I don't like the maiden butler thing where they completely explain everything to you, so you have no questions.
Butler.
Yeah, I know you do, Scott. That's why I mentioned that.
That's the maiden butler.
Yeah, as you know, Scott.
As you know, Josh is away right now at his doctor's appointment, and while he's gone, there may be problems with the.
It's like when you're watching a TV show and they pull up to some place and somebody who's driving or somebody in the car goes, well, here we are at the doctor's office now. And
right.
Everybody just proceeds as though that's how people actually talk.
Right.
We came here 2 weeks ago and got that first appointment where we talked about your high cholesterol, and then we went to the doctor. There was.
But what's great about what you mentioned earlier in the show about the 9/11 thing, which I think a lot of authors, they understand here, but they don't understand that they can do it in their own universe, is that things like that, or like dogs, like describing alien creatures, might not be the same. Like you look in it, 9/11 happened. Well, there might be a 9/11 in the future in your universe 500 years from now that has happened, and people just mention, oh, that's the incident.
So the best. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No. Go ahead.
All right. So the best book the best reading experience that I've ever had has been in reading Gene Wolfe's work. I don't know if you guys know who Gene Wolfe is. I suspect there's a lot of people who don't, but he's a giant of science fiction.
I don't know that I've read any. I don't know that the name kind of sounds familiar, but I don't know that I've read any of his stuff.
He really, I think he really hit his stride in the early 80s. And if you talk to like the older
Rick Barlow's Book of the Sun.
Yeah. If you talk to some of the bigger authors that were around in that era, they all know who he is. And the guy is just a frustrating genius. And I kind of attribute the way that I do a lot of what I do to what I learned by reading his work, because people get annoyed at me for kind of burying detail under mystery in my stories. And all I can tell them is, boy, you don't know what bad is. You've not read Gene Wolfe. The first time I tried to read a Gene Wolfe book, I think I was in my early 20s, and I was so disoriented coming out of that experience. Like the first time I read his book, and it was the Book of the New Sun. The first time I read those books, the experience was like having a fever dream. You know, like when you're sick and your temperature's jacked up and you start dreaming and you wake up the next day and you feel like you've been stoned. It's just like crazy imagery, things that make you real unsettled and you don't know why they make you unsettled. That was the experience of reading his books for the first time. And so that's kind of, for me, something like that is the epitome of what really good literature is. It's something, and I don't go as hard as he does when I'm writing, but it's something that puts you in a place that you wouldn't normally go on your own. I want to make you think about and feel things that you wouldn't usually do, or consider new things, consider new possibilities, ask questions about yourself. Am I as right as I always thought I was? Maybe I'm not. Maybe this is a new opinion or point of view that I've not been exposed to before. I want to ask questions that are hard to answer, or questions that don't have an answer, and then just, watch people spin their wheels trying to answer them.
I like you like set up your own Josh Gayou Coliseum, and you're like, there it is, fight to the death.
Well, most of the questions I present in my books, I'm presenting them because I don't have the answer. I don't know. I figure maybe if I write about it well enough, somebody will come and give me the answer because I don't have any answers. I just have questions. I guess a lot of the questions that I have seem to coincide with the questions that a lot of readers have because they seem to have latched onto it and they like what I'm doing. So that's good. It's good that somebody's listening.
Right.
So I know what it's like when people aren't listening. That sucks.
That's a downer. Definitely downer.
Definitely a downer. So what's the next book on the horizon for Josh Gayou? What do you have coming out?
Well, so my 5th novel, which I finished right at the beginning of this year, it'll be coming out pretty soon after Commune 4. It's called All Gifts Bestowed. And it's a sci-fi novel. I'm tackling artificial intelligence. But I'm not really taking it from the tack that sci-fi writers do. I take more of a Isaac Asimov type approach to this story. So it's less about it's less about Skynet, and it's a lot more having to do with what if we actually do it? What if we really make something that's capable of thought, and then it deals with all the moral implications. Like, okay, well, have we just created a new life form? What rules or laws are put in place to protect a new life form, if any? The quandary that I put together in the start of the book that kind of kicks off all the action is there's a company that's actually created this thing, and it's almost on accident because they didn't set out to create a conscious machine. They just sought to create like general intelligence, which is a different thing. It's something that looks like an intelligent life form, but actually isn't. It's just a really good simulation. Right. At some point, there's this threshold that you pass where the thing that you're dealing with is actually conscious. And we don't know how to define that as a human race. Nobody knows how to define consciousness. Psychologists can't do it. Psychiatrists can't do it. And the reason for that is because you cannot observe a state of consciousness in another person. The unique factor of consciousness is that you can only observe it internally within yourself. So for me, I can't tell that either of you guys are conscious. I cannot categorically prove that. I can infer it, right? Because I know you're a human. I'm a human. You're acting in ways that are predictable to me. I know that I'm conscious. Right. Therefore, it's probably a good bet that you are too, right? Yeah. But what if you create a thing that exhibits the behaviors of consciousness, but it's not human? So you don't have that inference anymore. You don't have that logical bridge. Right. Right. All throughout history, humans have been really horrible to each other, just based on stupid stuff, right? It usually has to do with a disconnect of beliefs or principles, right? I worship this god, you worship that god, or you've got funny skin color.
Yeah, right.
So how do we?
You look like me. You must be my friend, or vice versa.
So how do we treat something that doesn't even have any skin? You know. So the question is, let's say you got a company that creates this thing, right? Now they want some return on investment because it's really expensive to make the thing, right? Well, now we want you to start solving problems that we usually have to pay really smart people to figure out. We don't have to pay you money. We don't have to pay you a wage. You don't need medical. You don't need time off. Start solving problems for us, right? And at some point, the machine, it learns by solving problems, but then the problems get too easy because it's grown. And at some point, those problems are really boring. You say, okay, here's the next thing we want you to do. Then the machine goes, no, I don't want to. So now what do you do?
What now, bitches?
There's a bunch of uncomfortable questions that raises, right? Like, well, right. Okay, I've just invested, like, I don't know, millions or billions of dollars in building you. You're my toy, and I want you to perform, and now you're refusing to. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean that the machine has a right to its own self-determination or destiny? If I take that machine and force it to do what I want it to, is that now slavery? What does that mean? If I can create a machine that performs creative and complex problem solving What does that do to my economy? How many people are now out of work that used to say, oh, well, you know, factory jobs are drying up, but I don't care. I think for a living. I use my brain. Like me, I'm an engineer. What happens when they create a machine that can engineer for me? What happens to me? I don't know.
My question is, are they ever going to create a machine that can like lay around and watch Netflix all day and make bad food decisions? Because that would be
dude. I got that market beat. I'm good. But that's kind of the point.
They make a machine to do that, and there's nothing left for me.
Right.
So the thing that scares the hell out of me is that we're like right on the edge of that discovery. We're not. You know. In my book, I kind of goose the timeline. You know, I said every book that I write, it's got to have one little cheat that gets me over the hump and allows me to go exploring. And in this one, it's just that there was the technological magic that allowed this machine to exist. And I kind of know. The only cheat that I really had to make was that somebody somewhere suddenly comes up with this wonderful process where they're able to make really, really long strands of carbon nanotubes with high quality areal density. So it's like we can't really do that. We can make
Doesn't everybody know how to do that? I mean, I've got 3 carbon tubes right over there.
We can make them. I think the longest was like make it maybe a meter. I think that's as good as we get. But then the structure itself just falls apart. So that was like my one cheat. And then everything after that, I feel kind of proceeds naturally from that. But outside of that, we're pretty close to that point. We're staring right down the barrel in the trucking industry right now. The truckers are 2 things. One, they're a fantastic boost to my sales because a lot of my readers are truckers, man. But outside of that selfish point of view, they're also the blood in this country's veins. The way you get anything that you've got right now, whether you're shopping for it at Amazon, that's all brought to you by a trucker. Yeah. They make the whole country work. But what happens when you create a truck that doesn't need a trucker anymore? The trucking industry is huge. I don't know what the numbers are, but there's a tremendous number of people that are driving goods from A to B, and that's their whole profession. And that's a serious profession too. You need all sorts of special licenses for it. If you're transporting hazardous materials, there's a whole different level that you've got to pass to be able to do that. And at some point, they're just going to have trucks that drive themselves, and you're going to have an army of people spanning across the nation that they've got to go find something else to do. Mm-hmm. And people who look at history as a model for dealing with this stuff, they always talk about, the horse and buggy whip. The buggy manufacturers and the buggy whip manufacturers all complained about this when the automobile was invented. It's like, yeah, that has parity with the topic, but innovation has only accelerated. We invented the first automobile. It's only gotten faster and faster and faster. And now what we're seeing, even today in computer security and social media, all of the laws and bureaucracy that we have set up to keep everybody safe, they're lagging behind what technology is by like a good 20, 30 years. So everything is changing now so fast, so quickly, that we're really at a point where it's outpacing the economy's ability to keep up with it. We saw back in 2009 just how shaky our economy is, right?
Right.
You get something silly, as innocuous as the housing industry. You allow that to blow up as big as it gets, and then somebody at one point goes, "I want my money now," and everything just collapses, right?
Yep.
So I wonder what a market disruption of that level does to the economy overall, and how huge it is. And that's kind of what that's kind of the things that I'm exploring in this new book.
And when does it come out? Do you have a launch date for it?
I do, but I'm the kind of writer that, his publisher is going to tear his hair out because I can't remember the date. I'm sure I've got it written down somewhere.
Oh, no, you're fine.
It's probably written.
It's like right on the heels of Commune 4. Like as soon as Bob gets done doing all the audio for 4, which is we're supposed to be wrapping really soon now, and then Commune 4 I think comes out next month early. And all gifts bestowed, the print and ebook versions are supposed to be dropping like really soon. And then I don't know if he's going to go from Commune 4 straight to all gifts, or if he's got another book that he's got to pick up from another writer and then jump into mine. But they're like back to back. They're coming really quick. Very
cool. Do you have a website, or do people just go to Amazon, pick up your books? Where would you like people to send people?
Yeah, the best place to go to find me is just to like Google my name. You can type Joshua Gayou or Commune Book Series. And usually my website, which is joshuagayouauthor.com, it's like one of those links in the top. But yeah, Google seems to autocomplete Joshua Gay pretty quick.
Which is a common problem with Josh.
Yeah, every day I have that problem.
Boy, it's getting really dark in this room. I just noticed I looked at my little inset picture and I was like, oh my god, I look like cigarette smoking man from the X-Files.
No, it's like the sun's setting, and I'm thinking this is a really like kind of cool like aesthetic
riding off into the sunset, or podcasting into the sunset.
As the show's getting longer, the sun's going down. I'm like, oh, this is very nice. It's very atmospheric.
Yeah.
Josh, it's been a blast having you on the show, man. And we're definitely gonna have you back, because I didn't touch half the questions that I wanted to ask.
I'm sorry about that.
No. Don't be sorry, because that's what we love. We love having conversations.
We get 4 shows out
and yeah, exactly. And seeing where the conversation goes. So I definitely want to get you back on and talk with you about that stuff. But
I'd love to. I love getting together with like-minded folks and discussing this kind of stuff. Not even necessarily crap that I've written, but I just like discussing the act of storytelling in general.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's a fascinating topic to me, so I could go forever on it.
Well, let's get you back on, man. I'd love to have you back on, and maybe we can do it at a better time for you, so you don't have to break 800 traffic laws. And
maybe we can plan it better next time.
Yeah, Steve.
We need a middleman. I think we should call it.
We need a better middleman, Steve.
No, well, I think we're all friended up on all the social media thingies, right? So just give me a buzz when you want to do it, man. And
cool.
Absolutely
cool. Fantastic.
All right. Well, everybody that came and hang out with us in the live feed tonight, thank you guys for coming and spending your Monday evening with us. Christopher Mower says Trucker's Rule. And then James McDonald actually says April 30th, 2019 for print and ebook.
Oh, thank you.
So thank you, James, for that. Speaking of James, welcome all the new people in the feed. If you have not already, like and subscribe to the channel. You'll get notified of all the interviews that we have. We do weekly interviews. We have a Monday show and Thursday show, The Writer's Journey, which is Lauren Moore and Kayleen Williams. Next week, we have Andy Peliquin on the show. This is his second time on the show, I think. And he'll be on the show to talk about his latest novel. And then Jamie Davis, and at the end of the month, Larry Correa will be on the show with Casey Azell to talk about their anthology. So definitely like and subscribe if you have not. And we will talk to everyone later. Again, Josh, thank you for coming on the show, man. It was a blast.
Thanks, Josh. Josh.
Thanks so much for having me, guys. I had a lot of fun.
Good time.
Absolutely.
Good stuff.
All right, everybody. Thank you for coming and hanging out with us. We will see you next week, where we talk about writing, we talk about reading, and of course, everything in between, right here on Keystroke Medium.
And the reality of zombies.
And the reality.
And the reality of zombies. Come on, man. You know they're real. They're real. I'm just saying it.